Good evening. Welcome to the December 4th, 2024 meeting of the Gaithersburg Planning Commission. Good evening, everyone. Alternate Commissioner Carol Rieg is joining us on the dais this evening, but we have a full house, so it's sort of an observation mode for now.
Understood.
So thanks for being here. First up tonight is the approval of our minutes from November 20th. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes of November 20th, 2024 as written in the record.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, on to the regular agenda. And we have tonight a sign permit for sign, Sam, you're doing this, right?
Yes.
Sign -34394-2024 and sign 34395-2024. BP located at 100 North Frederick Avenue in the CD Corridor Development Zone. This is major sign waiver. And Sam Copeland from staff is presenting. Good evening, Sam.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Staff is before you to introduce sign permit applications sign-34394-2024 and sign-34395-2024 for BP located at 100 North Frederick Avenue in the CD Corridor Development Zone. This application comes before the Planning Commission in accordance with Section 24-8.7B1, which requires the Planning Commission to grant a major waiver for the second proposed changeable copy sign. Here to present the application is Gary Brent from MG Permits.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. As Sam said, we're here we're making a major sign waiver request for additional changeable copy sign for this site. The justification would allow the signs to meet the state requirement, which allows fuel price advertisement on each public roadway with a driveway entrance. This site currently has two existing changeable copy signs as shown in the photos below. The existing signs were approved under the prior sign code allowing signs at each driveway entrance. The code was changed to limit changeable copy signs to a total of one for sites of 5 acres or less. The code change implementation for this application would have a negative impact on this site with regard to simply advertising the business to the public as well as the state requirement for fuel price display. It's a photo from Frederick Avenue at the driveway entrance to the existing sign. This is the proposed sign this is on East Diamond, 18 square foot sign. And this is a photo from East Diamond looking at the existing sign. This is a sign proposed for Frederick Avenue. It's a 50 square foot sign, again replacing the in-kind, the sign that's existing. Site plan showing the locations of the two signs at the driveway entrances. And these are minor waiver requirements, just to summarize it. So we feel like this application will not adversely impact health, safety, and general welfare of the city. It's residents and businesses of public and the surrounding properties. Such deviation, this application will not be a hazard to traffic or vehicles or pedestrians. The signs are proposed replacement signs that do not currently cause any of these potential issues. The deviation of granting this waiver is necessary due to the visibility of the corner property. Two monument signs are required to allow traffic entering the property from two major highways via two driveway entrances. The signs are proposed to be non-illuminated as well. The waiver request confirms that all signs confirms that all sign regulations in Article 8. The proposed replacement signs meet the applicable code sections under Article 8. Major waiver request satisfies all minor waiver standards as found in Article 8. The property is a corner lot where public safety concerns require the proposed signs have necessary visibility for vehicular traffic. We're working with staff there on Frederick Avenue. There is a setback potential issue Department of Public Works raised. We're working with staff right now to move that sign further away from the road so that we can eliminate that visibility issue that Public Works sees. And I think everything else is fairly straightforward. If you guys have any questions, do I need to read the rest of that, Sam? No. I'm sorry.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Just one. Do we have an idea of what the setback
change in sign location, is it 100,000 feet or is it 2 feet? What is it?
Yeah, so Department of Public Works recommended a 2.5-foot setback. Let me go back to the photo of the existing sign. Let's pull one up so that outside column to the right, that's actually on Frederick Avenue. That column's going to go away. We're going to remove that. We're going to move the sign, and that is 18 inches, that column.
The sanitary easement, is that the reason?
Sorry?
It's a sanitary easement or just the view shed?
It's just simply, from my understanding, it's visibility. It's a viewing distance issue. The footprint of the sign is going to remain where it is. They're going to move this cabinet further inside the property and again remove that column that goes up to the outside of the sign, which is 36 inches roughly. If we move the sign all the way back to the existing inside edge of the brick monument, it would be a 36-inch setback from where it is now. And again, Department of Public Works is recommending 30 inches.
Great.
All right, any other questions? Yeah, I think you answered. I was wondering what happens, because you're basically reusing that L-shaped base and column thing, at least on the backside of the site, and then the forward part, you're just going to modify that column, right?
They're going to eliminate that column altogether. I mean, literally, my understanding, talking to the sign installer, they're going to cut the brick all the way down to the ground. The whole column is going to go, and then the sign again will be. So it'll essentially will be and actually further back than that, because it's going to be centered from where the sign is when it's moved to the inside, if that makes sense, of that wall.
Yeah, no, it does. Moves it away from the road. And the
Yeah, all of
sidelines
that's going to be gone. So another 2 bricks from to the left of the column in the photo are going to be gone as well.
Okay.
I guess I've got 2 quick
Yeah.
questions, one for you, one for staff. Are they going to be painting the peeling gray paint on the brick as part of this and refreshing the look
They
of
should.
that?
They should. I didn't get a feel one way or the other, but certainly if it's a condition, I don't see why they wouldn't do it. It should be done.
And I guess the only question for staff, as I read this, we're approving a sign waiver that's on top of a sign waiver, on top of a sign waiver, on top of
Yeah.
a previous sign waiver going back to like 1985 when this thing was done the first time, that it's been waived multiple times through history, and just because we're modifying it, we're doing another waiver or approval of a non-conforming condition.
Yes and no. So so the original sign permit was approved back in 1995, that era, and the sign code allowed 1 sign per frontage. And over time, the current code right now only allows 1 changeable copy sign per 5 acres. So this property has 0.39 acres, so it's only allowed to have 1. So essentially, the major waiver here this evening is for a second sign, so that way there could be 1 fronting each road.
Which is the unique condition here, is they sort of have 2
Correct.
Yeah.
front-facing access points, yeah.
Correct. It's a through lot.
All right, any other questions? No. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this application? All right, seeing no hands shoot up and people run to the podium. And there's nobody online, so I will assume nobody online is here to comment on that. Sam, what's the recommendation, please?
Staff recommends that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, applicant's testimony, and the staff report, findings, and recommendation, grant a major waiver for sign -34394-2024 and sign -34395-2024, finding them in compliance with section 24.8.7B of the city's zoning ordinance with 2 conditions.
All right. Any questions on the recommendation? All right,
Can we read the conditions?
pardon me?
Can you read the conditions?
Sure, Sam,
Sure, I
go
can
ahead.
do that.
Yeah.
So condition number 1, it's a basic general cleanup condition. Prior to permit issuance, the applicant will revise the plan drawings to include an electronic disconnect switch, to add a note that the green background of the internally illuminated light box that makes up the changeable copy sign will be opaque in accordance with section 24-8.8B4B, and to correctly identify the location for the changeable copy sign along East Diamond Avenue, subject to staff review and approval. And condition 2, applicant to work with staff to redesign or relocate the monument sign on North Frederick Avenue to improve vehicle and pedestrian sight distance.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think just as part of the findings record, if it doesn't get picked up from the earlier conversation, I think what we're acknowledging is not so much that this is a reapproval of something that just happens to have been there all this time, but that there is effectively 2 two main access points to this that are on opposite sides of the block. So it makes sense to give them the signage on whichever side you consider the first one, give them the second one.
Yeah.
Can I split a couple
Yeah.
hairs? Because the applicant mentioned a minor waiver in his discussion, but this is a major. Let's talk about, is there a big difference?
Part of the findings for a major waiver means you have to meet the findings of a minor waiver.
Okay.
So it builds upon, so it's not
Okay.
distinct, Danny.
Okay.
It's two separate. It's
All
all
right.
part of the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other questions, concerns?
Just, it was fun to see some of the old codes and, in there, and it was really funny to see
Handwritten.
the 80-something code was, you had a digital print, but the 90 code, you actually had to Xerox the book, which I think is just hysterical. But, you know, life is funny.
You get a little stroll down
Yeah.
bureaucratic memory lane. That's good. All right. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, applicant's testimony, staff report, findings, and recommendation, grant a major waiver for sign 34394-2024 and sign 34395-2024, finding it in confinement in compliance with section 24-8.7B of the city zoning ordinance with the two conditions as presented.
Second?
So moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thanks very much. Good
Thank
luck.
you. Happy holidays.
Same to you. All right, that takes us to a recommendation to the mayor and city council for a sketch plan amendment. And Kirk, since it's a relatively long introduction, instead of hearing it twice, why don't you go ahead and read it in if you would, please?
Okay, sure. Appreciate that. Let me see if I can find my thing here. Huh. Okay. And let me see.
Okay, well, now there was time to read it twice, I guess.
All right. Well, good evening, Planning Commissioners. This is a recommendation on sketch plan amendment application ASK-9892-2024, which is for the Spectrum at Watkins Mill Development. The Mayor and Council and Planning Commission held a joint public hearing on October 21st, 2024, and there was one speaker from the public. The Commission's record closed on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 5 p.m. with a total of 61 exhibits. So this slide shows an aerial photo of the Spectrum development as well as a map of the city showing where the Spectrum is within the city. And the Spectrum is located north of I-270, east of the Pepco utility corridor, south of Maryland 355, and west of Watkins Mill Road. And as outlined during the joint public hearing, sketch plan amendment is proposing the following changes to Block R. First change is to remove the age restriction. Another change is to increase the number of dwelling units from 158 to 244. And the last change is to increase the building height from 6 stories to 7 stories. And there are no changes proposed to the 3,000 square feet of non-residential uses that are included in Block R. And there are no proposed changes to other areas of the Spectrum development. Staff is generally supportive of the increased height and density. And during the joint public hearing, the applicant discussed multi-generational communities and continuum of care communities, but staff does note that this site has always been envisioned and approved as a standalone age-restricted building for persons age 55 and over. The applicant also discussed the lack of demand for these types of standalone age-restricted buildings. Staff has provided additional information in the staff analysis showing that there likely is demand. We did include the market report that was prepared for Lake Forest Mall redevelopment and some other industry sources. Staff further notes that the senior population of Gaithersburg does continue to grow. And of course, on this slide, which is included in the staff analysis as exhibit, or included in the packet as exhibit number 62, this is from the dwelling and population report that the city does twice a year. So this is information about the historic growth and the age 55 and older and 65 and older and 62 and older population, which you can see has been increasing since 1980. And in addition to that, we also included information about projected growth. So based on past trends, so basically the growth that was seen between 2010 and 2022, we just took that, grew it, used the city population total to sort of make sure we didn't exceed that total. And this is what we're showing. If you just do a simple projection, this is what you end up with, which again shows growth through 2050. So although not usually a sketch plan issue, potential bedroom mix is discussed in the applicant's statement, and staff is recommending a condition that would ensure that Building R would provide a balanced mix of bedrooms, both internally and for the larger spectrum development and for the city as a whole. And that condition is really irrespective of the age restriction, so this is like a separate issue. Proposed condition would require an increased proportion of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units and a reduced proportion of studio units. And the proposed condition will both offset the other unbuilt spectrum building, Building ST, which has about 88% studio and 1-bedrooms mix shown in their approved SDP and final site plan. And it would also provide consistency with the proportion of 2-bedroom and larger units that have been approved in the pipeline outside of the spectrum development. And a higher proportion of 2-bedroom and larger units does help encourage a more stable long-term population, which is more likely to be engaged as city residents, as opposed to the 1-bedrooms and studios, which typically is more transient population that may be a little bit less engaged. So the purpose of tonight's meeting, after all that, is for the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the Mayor and City Council on the sketch plan amendment application. As noted earlier, staff is supportive of the increased number of dwelling units and the increased height with the one caveat, but is not supportive of the age restriction removal. Staff has included a staff analysis in tonight's packet, which provides additional information about staff's recommendation and the proposed conditions. So prior to its motion for recommendation, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission formally reaffirm its finding that under Section 20-18A of the City Code, events since adoption of the 2009 Master Plan make the land use recommendation of commercial, industrial, retail, office in that plan no longer relevant. The Commission first made that determination as part of the approval of the previous sketch plan amendment, ASK-8940-2021. That one, of course, included that building ST that was talked about a second ago. And following that master plan land use reaffirmation, staff recommends that the Planning Commission, based upon the applicant's testimony, the evidence in the record, and the findings presented in the staff analysis, recommend approval of sketch plan amendment ASK-9892-2024 to the Mayor and City Council with the following 2 conditions. So the first condition is that Block R must include an age restriction that requires 80% or more of the units to be leased to households with at least one person who is age 55 or older, consistent with fair housing standards. And the second condition is that for any subsequent schematic development plan or final site plan approvals, the overall bedroom unit mix must consist of the following: a maximum of 10% studio units, a minimum of 30% 2-bedroom units, and a minimum of 10% 3-bedroom units. And for purposes of satisfying this condition, any units that include a den would not be allowed to count that den as a bedroom. And staff is available for any questions.
Very, very good. And just to remind the public, our record is closed on this item as we're providing just a recommendation to Mayor and Council on their actions. Kirk, just for a basis of comparison, what is the approved mix now?
So
Unit
let
mix.
me go back to one of these slides. So both of these slides kind of show the same thing, the building R. So right now, building R, based on the last SDP approval, it was about 11% studio. That's why we came up with a 10% cap there. It was about 66% 1-bedroom, about 14% 2-bedroom, and 9% 3-bedroom. So we thought 10% maybe was a better, fit for the 3-bedroom. And then on this slide, if you look at the other pipeline that's outside of spectrum, you can see it's between 28% or 31% for the 2-bedrooms, depending on whether you include Lake Forest or not. So that's where staff thought the 30% made a lot of sense.
So you pulled the 1-bedroom component of that mix out altogether?
Correct. So, at the most, it could end up being 50% 1-bedroom if they did the maximum 10% 3-bedroom or maximum 10% studios, minimum 10% 3-bedroom.
Oh, so you don't care about them, it's just that could make up the difference?
Correct. And we thought that was reasonable. I mean, we're trying to have a balance here, we don't want to make
I
it.
understand perfectly.
Yeah.
I was reverting back to my hotel days where it had to add to 100.
Good old days when things added up to 100.
Yeah.
No 6-bedroom apartments? No.
Well, sure, they could.
Joking.
Yeah.
Sorry,
We,
Kurt.
we could certainly change the condition to say
Knock down
3-bedroom
a
or
wall,
larger.
right?
Fair enough. All right.
I have a quick question.
ahead.
First of all, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a bit. Talk about a little about APFO. How's that?
What's that?
Adequate public facilities in the schools test?
Oh, Gotcha. Funny enough, I did bring something for that. Right now, there are no schools in moratorium in the city through July.
Yeah. Okay.
And for this particular area, which is in the Watkins Mill cluster, there are no up fees even. So the schools are actually not even to the point where they're crowded enough to require that
Okay.
additional fee from the city. And we don't expect that to change really
Good.
in the near
Just
term.
wanted to get
so,
that out there. On the-
Yeah.
But we would note that the schools test is not applicable under the zoning ordinance for,
okay.
For sketch plan.
yeah,
Right.
senior house, whatever,
Right, right,
age-restricted
right.
housing
That's
55
true
and
too,
above.
right.
So the
Right.
schools test wouldn't come into
It
apply.
would even
But
with,
traffic and the other ones.
but even with having
Right. So even if
Younger
there was
folks
not an
living
age
there,
restriction,
yeah.
it would still
Right.
pass the APFO right now.
okay.
It's a valid question because to be clear,
Yeah.
the only requirement is that one person.
One
is there
person,
above
right.
55, so they
Correct.
could
One person in the
theoretically-
household must be 55.
And then
or
20% could be non-age restricted as well.
Correct.
So you've still got an impact potential there. So I think that's a worthwhile. thing
Yeah,
to
that's why I wanted to
yeah,
just bring it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions for staff?
At this time.
Okay. Well, he gave us their recommendations.
Yeah, he
so,
did.
Let me ask one sort of technical question. So there's two components to this that may have independent. We may think of independently, just in terms of what we do. There's the unit mix that staff is proposing that speaks to some level of understanding what the housing mix is in the city as a potential for sustained residence versus maybe more transient residence, maybe or maybe not. But anyway, it could speak to that regardless of price, and that there's a potential of saying that mix also begins to fill out the broader mix across the city. So if we feel like and you can probably tell me better than I can back into this in this conversation, but are we heavy on the transit type units, which is studio, one bedroom or studio with den kind of units in the city? Is that kind of what the implication is here?
So I did not look at all of the units in the city, but for units that have been built since about the year 2000,
Yeah.
they do tend to be heavier on the studios and one bedrooms. So I would say in the last 25 years, we've probably skewed more towards that. Probably more than half, way more than half, are studios and one bedrooms.
Okay.
Whereas before that, the older units, the older apartment buildings do tend to have more, a higher percentage of the 2 bedrooms and even some 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, as a member of the baby boomer generation, I don't plan to speak on their behalf, but just as an individual who's in that situation right now, looking around perhaps for moving around to another building, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that I've come across, particularly in around the Kentlands, for instance, where there's a senior building, age-restricted building. I believe it starts around 62 and a half, if I'm not mistaken. And I know quite a few families that are anxious to go in there, but they lack the 2 or 2+ bedroom amenities that they'd like to have. In fact, it's my understanding that they actually broke down some walls between units in order to expand it to accommodate the 2+ or the 3 bedroom apartments. I think there is a need in the city, particularly when looking at your statistics of, I believe it's gone from 17% of age 55 and above back in 2017 to almost 25% based on the figures that I saw in the charts there. So clearly there's a need, and 55 I think is also an interesting age because a lot of people at 55 are still working full time.
Correct.
And they may have families or they may have extended families. So, sorry guys. So I think there is a real need for something like this. Plus, it's a building that's going to be within the confines of a larger community that integrates in all of these amenities and facilities that I think a lot of people would like to have. So it's not isolated as a standalone senior center, if you will, or senior building. I applaud the staff for the work that they did. I think it's tremendous information that you've given us to support a lot of what you're saying. So once again, I applaud the staff for
Thank you.
coming up forward here.
Thanks.
Yeah, we know where Kirk has been because this is a big report.
Yeah.
So
Any other comments?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, and I've been wrestling with this a little bit since we started, well, since the last meeting, as a planning commission and what we're sort of tasked with commenting on, there's certainly a broader policy question here, but from my perspective, our guidance is what has been adopted in the master plan and the previous plans. And without a compelling, policy decision by mayor and council to say, no, we're going in a different direction, or some other mitigating factor, for me, this is, as a planning commissioner, my opinion may be different if I was sitting in one of the councilman's seats, but I'm really looking at it from what is our master plan that was thought through and done strategically and is supposed to guide our decisions, say, and does the master plan give any reason to change what's been set in stone? Obviously, the height, the density, the number of units are, to me, no-brainers, especially given the site. I mean, frankly, if someone wanted to add another story and more units at this location, I'd probably be all for it. Density is a good thing. So even as far as the unit mix, I mean, I think there are obviously valid planning and strategic planning reasons to look for the unit mix we're doing, but that to me sort of sits on the border of policy versus planning decision as well. So.
And I agree with you, and I think that's why this is a recommendation and not findings. I mean, we're basically looking for the things that we should be commenting on and leaving the others to the council and at a policy level. So, and I think you said it. I'll paraphrase it. You're in favor of the height increase and the density increase, the unit number increase. Let me ask you a hypothetical. So, to a certain extent, this argument about not doing age-restricted housing is market-driven. It's not a report that came out by any kind of planning level analysis. It seems to be market driven, or at least based on assumptions about the market, as is the research that you all did. Talking about demand. At some point in the future, it wouldn't preclude if there were compelling reasons to come back to the council and ask for a policy change. There are steps that could be taken to back off on the age restriction and convert it to non-age restriction, I suppose, right? I mean, that wouldn't be out of the question sometime in the future if there were true evidence that it was no longer a market or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you pointed out, that's really a policy question for the mayor and city council. But certainly if in the future, if there was a new application that had new information that showed that, there was less of a demand or that the world had changed, certainly the mayor and council could consider that.
And I do think, and I apologize for putting you on the spot about unit mix across the city. And it might be something that would deserve a little bit more data follow-up before it goes in front of the council. But I think that informs our decision too, because I think that is a planning issue, is how much we get a broad range of unit types and the potential for, or what that implication is for long-term versus short-term, leases and.
That data, there's a chart that I remember from the housing element of the master plan, a very detailed chart analysis that breaks that down. I just don't have it off.
Yeah, I don't have it either. But I think that along with our assumption that more density here is an appropriate approach, or our findings that that's an appropriate approach, I think is where our recommendation needs to stop. That the age restricted piece is strictly policy, and we can defer to the council for that. But reinforce the idea that the unit types and the unit mix is an important part of that housing diversity thing we're trying to build up within the city.
And if I may,
Yeah.
within Kirk's report on page 7, he also does cite that the housing element does have the recommendation that the city's approval of multifamily rental projects should reflect the unit sizes that are consistent with data-supported renter household size needs. So, I mean, if that was Kirk's, recommendation to the commission is based upon also yet another master plan recommendation. And again, he provides the data that shows on average in this area, it's over 2 people per unit.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, are you saying that we should void out condition number 1?
No, I'm saying since this is a recommendation.
Right.
I'm just saying in our narrative, I'd recommend, our recommendation simply allow the council to make the final decision without our influence or opinion on the age-restricted piece, unless there's a compelling urban planning or.
From my perspective, I'm looking at what was cited on packet page 68 from staff, which is the housing element of the 2018 master plan.
Right.
That identifies needs for age-restricted.
Right.
And establishes preserving and creating that as that policy goal has been adopted by mayor and council and codified in the
Okay,
master
fair
plan.
enough. Okay, I follow you.
So
And I would add, it was part of our discussions with the exception of that master plan, site-specific master plan. So when we went in for that sector plan and, that whole master plan, mixed use,
Right.
the actual, unit types were part of the discussion, as well as the senior restricted housing.
So I guess what I was trying to tee up was, from my position, as a matter of planning, the master plan is guiding us, and that
Correct.
gives pretty clear guidance that it should remain as senior housing. If mayor and council wants to make a policy decision that in this case they don't feel like applying that, or they see other justification, that's their purview.
That's kind of where I was headed, is that's for them to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I guess staff has proposed in their recommendation that we reaffirm our original recommendation for complying with the master plan and with the original sketch plan or the
Correct,
SDP
correct.
whatever. So that's reasonable. All right, any other?
Reasonable and good.
Yeah.
I don't want to give up all of our authority.
You know what, I'm completely mired right now in the application, not the
Yeah.
broader.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure we focus on this application, not necessarily the broader. Master plan implications. Danny, anything to jump in on?
No, I'm
Good, okay.
I'm liking the discussion though.
All right. Any concern or any discussion around the recommended unit mix that staff has put in as a condition?
No.
I mean, only in that we should expect, there's only so much air that can go into a balloon before it bursts. So it's, with the constraints of a, type 3 building, which I think is what's being proposed here, we're decreasing the number of units when we increase the number of larger units, right? And so we're not going to get the larger number of units that we're approving tonight, most likely. It's apples and oranges. So just so that we're aware, it's two competing ideas. The bigger units are going to reduce the unit count because you can only put so much unit in that building without adding 2 more floors, right? So it's
Well, has staff looked at that? Is it a net yield based on these recommendations? Or based on what, okay, so there was a basis for the original proposal. Then what's the likely impact of this recommendation?
Yeah, we did not look at that. We feel that it's really more, again, looking at the broader picture. What is the pipeline that's been approved outside of Spectrum? What does that look like? And it looks different from what they're proposing here, or at least what was approved here prior. So that was really the way we looked at it, sort of in the bigger picture. I'm sure Commissioner Hopkins is correct about if you have a fixed amount of volume that you can only fit. If you put bigger units, you're going to have less of them because they take up more space. But there may be some other creative ways around that. Slightly
And then,
smaller closets, slightly smaller bedrooms. I don't know.
and then some more of his split hairs is just that.
Not that I have any.
When we
Yeah, I feel you, Dan.
is that when we step into the larger units, there's certainly a large need for multiple bedroom units in the city, but that cost obviously goes up tremendously. So is there a market need for very expensive large units is really the question, not is there a need for large units? So there's there's something we're going to need to carefully watch as this gets approved. I completely agree actually with staff findings. It's a great report. So thank you, Kirk. And I think it is a good piece of the puzzle that is Spectrum, right? It's a great development. And this is kind of the missing piece that will really fit it all together,
Yeah.
along with the new apartment building up at the northeast corner. So I think it's exciting, and I think it's the right thing to do to push for some larger units. 10% begins to worry me at three beds. There is, to your point, the housing really doesn't talk about current absorption rates, current vacancy rates for the larger units at a price point that reflects the cost to build those larger units. So, we're gonna want as a city to understand what the 3-bedroom thing means. We're going to want to not push for, there's some language in here, Kirk, that talks from a planning standpoint about larger units are desired, physically larger units, wider bedrooms, wider living areas. And that those things are also at odds with a 3-bed. So if you can have a very efficient 3-bedroom, meaning smaller, physically smaller 3-bedroom that can still separate folks' sleeping quarters, that may be a great piece to compromise on. So as it goes into the other side of the office, into the building design piece, we want to make sure we haven't constrained ourselves there either.
Although we'd want to build in some kind of flexibility on the sketch plan level that could happen if it needs to without coming back through a whole nother sketch plan amendment.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, so originally staff had thought that the condition might be something that it has to be X% 2-bedroom or larger units. And then, again, looking at what was sort of approved prior, we thought, oh, well, if they were doing 9%, a little over 9%, why not just say 10%, 10% for the studios? And then that sort of sounds good. It seemed reasonable. But again, it's certainly up to the commission if you think the condition should be altered, for more flexibility, or if you think it's too, asking too much because of the competing things, like you said. But at the same time, it's also, again, trying to balance, as I mentioned, building ST is like 88% studios and 1-bedrooms, which is pretty high. So,
No, and I don't fault you for coming up with that logic. I'm thinking about the next step where, I don't know, stacking units, whatever ends up happening in the true design development phase of this, where they figure out how to do this, that it doesn't nick the upset on the total unit proposal by much, if any, right? And also doesn't yield units that are effectively, maybe on paper they say 3 bedrooms, but they might as well just be 2-bedroom where you can actually get a full-size bed in those rooms. It's sort of like one of those,
right.
like we don't want to play games with gaming this if
I got you.
if it's not really going to work. And so I'm trying to figure out.
Or if it's a 3-bedroom but only 1 bathroom, right? That's not as useful as the 3-bedroom and
Good
2
point.
bathroom.
Excellent.
Right.
Great point. So that's part of what I want to make sure we've got the flexibility to address in more realistic terms. And I don't know, you guys chime in, please, if in this proposal for range or for unit mix, if it can be a range as opposed to a hard and fast threshold, either up or down. I'm just sort of putting it out there for a discussion, but. Because theoretically, just let me put this, I won't hide this thought. Let's say you wanted 10%, or no, excuse me, let me make sure I'm using the number you used. 10% 3-bedroom units. Okay, now, let's say during design you could get 7, and you could also justify it in a market condition, and they were great units. I'd say that was great. That was a win. If it was 10%, but they ended up being, like I said, sort of a token bedroom or 1 bathroom, and they were not leased at a rate that was reasonable, then I'd say that was really kind of silly for us to drop that in
Right.
there, and then it's just.
And this is only a sketch plan, so certainly staff was trying to be a little bit prescriptive here just to give you that option. But if you feel that it's more appropriate just to say, hey, in the future, when the schematic development plan comes in, there should be a bedroom mix established at that time, right? If you want to just leave it completely open-ended and not try to be so
I don't know.
prescriptive at this
It's a-
level.
it's a discussion item.
But-
Is there value in establishing these percentages as targets to be reviewed with staff and as part of the subsequent design, right? Like
Muscular recommendation.
yeah, like you always set targets for all sorts of things, and sometimes you exceed them, and sometimes you get close. But it gives, in my mind, something along that gives the flexibility for what you described, but keeps these numbers in here because these are good data driven. There's logic behind saying this is what we should strive for. But if we miss it by 2% one way or another, or 3% one way or another,
Yeah.
and there's reason behind that, that's okay. We don't want to have to reopen a sketch plan because we're 2% off.
That's where
of
I'm
the
headed
target.
with this, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know until we really see it laid out,
Yeah.
what makes sense.
That can be placed in the discussion, in the CPC. So if the commission so chose, just to make a motion, to support staff's recommendation, but as the commission's aware, we often do a narrative at the beginning. So Kirk could bake that into the discussion of how you came to that, but what this other thought is for council to consider when they're doing stuff and to follow up on Commissioner Wessel. So I did pull up the housing element. So based upon 2022, 43% of the entire city inventory, Class D through A, is one bedroom, 4% was studios. But as Kirk mentioned, that became very skewed on products that came in after 2020. So this is everything. And at that point in time, based upon vacancy rates, studios had 4.1% vacancy, one bedrooms 3.2, two bedrooms 2.8, and three bedrooms 1.8. So again, it's sort of reflecting the demand for the larger size units.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other thing of note is, as Kirk, I think, mentioned, everything that we have in the pipeline, the true development pipeline, more than covers our projected 2040 growth. So any new multifamily that's coming on, is just above what our projected growth numbers are.
And there's demand out there. I mean, we know we can't go wrong doing something, right? We just want to make sure it's advantageous to the city as well. So with that discussion, what do you guys recommend? For a modified condition, just a narrative? I feel like it ought to be a modified
I think we
condition
can leave
from
it, but
us.
if the commission's clear on what they want included in the narrative, again, that they think, that the council should consider, flexibility within.
As long as it's reflected in the minutes. I mean, I think that's what's important here. And then we make the recommendation. As you said, it's a recommendation. It's not firm. So I would go forth with what's been proposed.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to edit on the fly, I would simply change condition 2 to say, for any subsequent plans and approvals, the overall bedroom unit mix shall target the following percentages. Deviations from these percentages shall be justified as and explained as part of future submissions. I mean,
We could make that change also, because that's fair, because then at SDP, it allow the applicant,
Exactly.
if something, depending upon the time in between.
Exactly. And the council sees that too, so they can nudge it one way or the other during it.
But it is two-edged. I mean, there could be reports that come out that show there's even less demand for studios in one, so, that would.
yeah, I mean,
So you want to
You
change
don't-
maximum target?
I would say that these percentages here are the targets that future plans should come in with, and significant, or I would don't use significant, that's subjective. Just deviations from these numbers shall be explained as part and justified as part of future submissions for consideration during approval.
And no, I think the English is the targeted maximum and the targeted minimum. The targeted minimum. So
Okay.
for the three
Yeah.
things.
I feel more comfortable with
Right.
it because then we don't have to go all the way back to reopening this. If something
Right.
about the math doesn't work out because whatever.
So Commissioner Wessel, one more time, if you're looking at it, if you could just read clearly so we can make sure we accurately define the condition.
So
in the
I'll
CPC.
take another pass at condition 2. For any subsequent schematic development plan and final site plan approvals, the overall bedroom unit mix shall target the following, the following maximums and minimums. And then leave everything as is and add the sentence second to last that says, deviations from these target percentages shall be, explained as part of subsequent submissions.
And it's a
Supported
recommendation.
with
You guys,
adequate justification.
Yeah, with adequate
Yeah.
justification.
you guys can wordsmith it since it's a recommendation. I think you get the gist. Kirk, is that okay with you?
Yeah,
You
that
follow it?
sounds good to me.
You guys follow it all right? City attorney, any issues with that?
No, that should be fine.
Okay. All right, so that we're there on the mix, we're good on the height, total number of units.
I
Go
would
higher.
even say I'm excited about the height and I'm excited about the increase. So it's good.
Excellent. All right, any other discussion? No? Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Planning Commission, based on the findings presented herein, the applicant's testimony, evidence in the record, this is recommend approval of sketch plan amendment ASK 9892-2024 with the two conditions, including the modified second condition as discussed.
Second?
So moved and seconded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay, and then
Onward.
staff also had recommended the reaffirming of the master plan thing. Frank, would that need a motion as well, or since they discussed it, is that good enough?
It's adopted.
There's no harm by a motion, but it
Those
wouldn't
in
be
favor.
needed. And be reflected otherwise.
Okay. It can be reflected in the CPC, I think, so. We could reflect it in the CPC, you think?
In the narrative in the
The
beginning.
narrative. Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. Thank you.
You need us to verbally confirm that, but I certainly affirm it, but
Yes.
No deviation from the master plan,
gotcha.
right?
No,
Okay. All right, thanks. That,
Yeah,
that,
thaness.
that felt a
Good
little
work.
soft on the end here, but that's okay. I guess it's a recommendation. Thanks all. I guess the applicant's team left, so good luck, wherever you are.
They'll watch the recording.
I hope so. Next up is a tree removal waiver for tree-34292-2024 Bartlett Tree Experts on behalf of Miltenyi Biotec. Tree removal waiver for industrial complex property at 1201 Clapper Road in the I-3 Industrial and Office Park Zone. Against tree removal waiver and presenting from staff is Lisa Bledsoe. Oh, hi, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Bledsoe.
So wait, that's a new name.
Nice to meet you. Good evening. I'm in the Environmental Services Division. I'm also an arborist in that division, and so I reviewed this tree on site as well when preparing the
Have you
staff
been to
report.
one of our meetings before?
I don't think so.
Well, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Right, I was
Come
like,
more
I don't
often.
think
Thank
I don't
You see
think
what,
so.
you see how exciting this night stuff is that
It
happens
is
around here?
very exciting.
Okay.
Jasmine, I'm not sure if you can pull up the.
We need more arborists at these meetings
One
for
of
sure.
the tabs on the
Oh,
PDF.
okay.
Tree.
There
There.
we go. Got it there. Okay. Let me.
Good Control L.
Does it have? Okay. So this tree is over 30 inches. It's 60 inches, and Bartlett Tree Experts, on behalf of Miltenyi Biotech, the property owner, submitted this tree removal application on November 6th. Upon our review, I did go out and measure it as well at 60 inches. Trees greater than 30-inch DBH require a variance for removal granted from either the Planning Commission or City Council. The applicant has submitted a tree health assessment to support this variance for the removal of the subject tree. The tree is located on this 1201 Clapper Road property, right here as you're entering the property from the Clapper Road side. It's the second tree. As you can see, it's adjacent to their main entranceway here. There's also a sidewalk to the right of it, and there are some power lines along Clapper Road here near this intersection. So if the tree were to fall, there's definitely some targets there. It would be a hazard. Unfortunately, what I found was consistent with what the arborist, the applicant, found. It's suffering from oak bracket fungus, which is a sign of internal decay. It's around half the base of the tree. I didn't consider this a hazard tree for immediate removal because there weren't any other signs of decline, or it wasn't leaning. There wasn't anything that said, okay, this is gonna fail in the next 2 weeks. But it definitely is not a good sign because it shows that the internal decay has already started. So unfortunately for this tree, I agree with their recommendation to remove because it will continue to decline, unfortunately. This tree was also in a forest conservation plan for the development and was listed as a specimen tree to remain. So given that, let's see if I can zoom in here. Yeah, this one here. Given that, I would recommend it with the condition that they replace it with another large shade tree within 1 year of removing it. Thank you.
The removal of that tree, would that create any problem, though, as you said, with the underground wires?
It shouldn't. They'll just do a standard cut and grind the stump. I don't think they'll be digging up roots.
And it would be the same, essentially the same place, the replacement tree?
Yeah. I went out and looked, and there's space there to replace in the same location.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, and this is really only motivated by the condition of the tree. There's no
Yeah.
proposed development, there's no
No.
anything else going on there really on the side.
Correct.
Right? So, okay, any other questions? Is anyone here to testify on this? Okay. Seeing nobody, and nobody's on half, yeah. It's unfortunate, but there is a life cycle to trees too.
Yeah.
You get sick and, just curious, and this is not influencing the findings per se. When you find a tree in this condition, do you have any sense of what you can expect? Like it'll end up becoming dangerous in a year, 5 years, or is there no way of knowing?
It's hard to put an exact amount of time on it, but since there aren't any, I did just scroll to some photos here at the end. Since there aren't any other obvious defects shown at this stage, I would think it would probably have another few months at least.
Oh, only a few months, okay.
Yeah, since we can't see inside the base, it's hard to know how much it's decayed, but since it is there at the foundation. of
So what's the evidence of the decay? Is it that the tree is dying on top or something, or?
So it's actually here. I'll have the photos here. Some lovely photos of the fungus.
Oh, I
itself.
see, okay, so that's,
Yeah, so it's around this whole half of the tree along the root flare here. So it's a sign that it's already been decaying inside. I haven't seen any dieback really in the canopy yet. That's why, again, it wasn't just deemed a hazard tree. There's already a lot indicating it might immediately fail. But the process has definitely begun once you see the fungus.
And its twin is not suffering? It's twin? There's like two trees right next to each other.
It's just the one.
Just the one?
I mean, there are
Thinking about the other side
several
of the street.
trees along here,
Yeah.
but it's just this one.
From personal experience, you never know when they're going to go.
Yeah, it's PTSD. You can recuse yourself, Phil. If you
Me too. Got it.
No, I'm staying around just to approve tree removal waivers.
kill them all.
I had to take out some trees because they were dying. So, yeah.
I
All right.
noticed tomorrow, too.
any questions? Any concerns? There's no one here testifying. So what's the recommendation, please? Just for the record.
Recommendation. Staff recommends that the planning commission make a motion to grant the requested variance for tree 34292, 2024, removal of a 60-inch willow oak at 1201 Clopper Road, finding it in conformance with section 22-12 of the city code and based upon the findings presented in the staff report with the following condition. Applicant to replace the removed 60-inch oak tree with a large shade tree species approved by city staff within 1 year of the variance approval date.
Great. Any questions on the recommendation?
Do we not normally give some other criteria than large? Do we give caliper or a series of species, or that goes over to the tree code and it's a?
So we will review it and approve before they go forward, but typically they have to be at least the size that was indicated in the forest conservation plan. So in this case, this was a specimen tree to remain. It wasn't one that they planted, but we would look at similar species in the forest conservation plan to make sure it at least met that. But it would likely be larger, I think, in this case.
And the tree manual requires a minimum of any landscape trees in situations like this to be a minimum of 2-inch DBH. But that doesn't mean we can't require, 3 or 4 if they can find the nursery stock.
Yeah, it just on this side of the little gray line here, we would have, had to see that caliper and the species and all that kind of stuff. But I don't. It's not necessary. I'm just curious.
Right. Any other questions or concerns? Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant the requested variance for ENV 34292-2024, removal of a 60-inch willow oak at 1201 Clopper Road, finding it in conformance with section 22-12 of the city code, and based upon the findings presented in the staff report with the one condition is written to the record.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thanks very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Nice to meet you.
Next up is our site plan agenda, and first up is AFP-9971-2024, amendment to comprehensive sign package for the Walnut Hill Shopping Center at 16529 South Frederick Avenue in the C2 General Commercial Zone and RA Low density residential zone. Again, this is an amendment to final site plan. Jasmine, you're presenting from staff tonight, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So staff's before you to present amendment to final site plan application AFP 9971 2024. The subject property is at the Walnut Hills Shopping Center located at 16529 South Frederick Avenue. The applicant's requesting approval to amend the Walnut Hills Shopping Center comprehensive sign package to include the sheet signage. The sign package for the shopping center was approved by the Planning Commission on March 6, 2024 as final site plan application SP-9740-2024. This application comes before the Planning Commission in accordance with Section 24-12.16, subsection I-3, which grants Planning Commission authority to approve amendments to final site plans. Section 24-8.2, subsection 3 of the City Code further grants the Planning Commission authority to approve comprehensive sign package that includes provisions that deviate from the standards of the City Code. And now I will have the applicant do the presentation this evening.
Great, thanks. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jake DiPiazza
Oh,
with
thanks for
Granite
the
Canyon.
promotion. Yeah, this is just the planning commission.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. Mayor's not here. Planning Commission. I'm Jake DiPiazza with Granite Canyon Partners, representing the ownership of the shopping center, and I have John Eidberger with me, representing Sheets. So just to start you off, orient you to the location of the shopping center. This is the Walnut Hill Shopping Center on the east side of 355, just north of 370 and Shady Grove Road. Here is a more zoomed in image of the shopping center, bordered on the north by Northwestland and the south by Southwestland. And then in the southwest corner here, where you can see the different colored asphalt, is the location of the approved sheets. Some photos from 355 looking at the shopping center, the Sheets site directly in front here. And then this is from Southwestland looking north at the future Sheets location as well. And then this is out in front of the new Aldi, and you can see the renovated shopping center here. And then looking south from the main drive aisle next to the Bank of America at the lower level of the shopping center. So highlights of the CSP amendment tonight: we're here to allow for the signage for the recently approved Sheets convenience store and fuel station. Clarify the requirements for building and canopy signs for the Sheets. Locate the fuel pricing monument. And then two deviations that I'll point out tonight, one being the total number of monument signs at the shopping center, and an ancillary sign on the Sheets building that is slightly larger than a primary sign. Here you can see the proposed site plan of the Sheets and the location of all the monument signs. The red and green signs are previously approved as part of the CSP, and then the Sheets fuel price sign is sign S1, located right here along 355 in close proximity to the Sheets convenience store. Here's an image of the proposed Sheets monument sign and the location next to the building along 355. And then we'll go through the four sides of the Sheets building signs. This is the plan north side of the building. So this is side one here that faces the shopping center, with their primary Sheets sign on the building here above their entrance, and then a wall decal considered the ancillary sign, which I talked about earlier, is slightly larger than the primary sign. And then I've got an image of that MTO sign, which is a graphic that's applied directly to the brick and doesn't, have any depth or stand out to it. This is the plan east elevation facing Southwestland with the primary sign. The plan south, elevation facing 355. And then the plan west elevation facing Northwestland and the Bank of America and parking area. And then there are two signs that are proposed on the Sheets canopy. Those signs face south towards Southwestland and on the short side of the canopy, and then west towards 355 on the long side of the fuel canopy. And that's really everything. Any questions?
So the proposed monument, new monument sign, is there any clearance between it and the building?
It's very close to the building. We had to meet setbacks from the future property line, which is, will be pushed back towards the shopping center once a BRT taking happens, if that happens. And so we are very tight to the building. John can speak as to how tight, but I think there's just a bit of space there.
Good evening, John Eidberger with Sheets. Yeah, it's very tight there. The sign panels squeeze into that area. You can see the monument down below, the brick monument, or call it the base down below, is kind of smaller. And we did that to offset from the building structure. We didn't want to have the conflict with the building structure and the footings for the road sign too. I would also note that this is a very similar sign that we built up the road to the other sheets too. Not that that matters, but there is some comparison between those two stores. But it's tight there, and just the logistics of how we made that base smaller should help not have any conflicts between the store itself and the sign footing.
Okay.
There's a slope over there at that point also, isn't there? The property kind of slopes
There will
down?
be quite a bit of regrading happening on site here, and this might be the easiest way to show it. But yes, you're right that the slope goes as you go north. We're going downhill here, so the high point is up here where sign M1 is. But Sheets is bringing the whole site down, so there'll be a small retaining wall along Southwestland here. And so at this area, we should have some leveling out of, next to the building there and around where the sidewalk is, it should be relatively flat.
Is there a reason why this sign isn't closer to the corner where that M1 sign is now? Because at its current location, if you turn onto Southwestland, you're likely not going to see fuel prices, right? The people who are going to see this sign are people who drive past it and make a right into the building, given where it's located.
We looked up and down the whole corridor to place the sign. When you go towards the intersection of Southwestlands and 355, there's the M1 sign there for the shopping center. I think that there's also going to be some type of a community.
There'll be some landscaping in here and some hardscaping around the corner as well.
And then as you drive, I guess, I'll say page left. I get my directions confused here, I apologize, but we ran into, there's a sidewalk along that whole frontage there where the parking stalls are the front onto 355, so there's no place to physically locate a sign there too. Then you go further left, there's a stormwater management structure, then there's a patio, then there's the building, and then you get onto the other side where there's utilities coming in. So spatially, we were really just trying to, we were running out of places to put the sign basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will be challenged here. Frankly, from personal experience, you're challenged at the Sheets north up 355. If you're coming from the north, you can't see the fuel price until you're past past the gas station. So like I'm not sure there is a solution short of a sign on a 30-foot pole, which obviously we don't want.
No.
We would love that, but we know we can't.
I mean, it's you're sort of hamstrung by.
Wait, first you're cutting down all the trees, now you're putting signs up.
Has an agenda.
Point taken on both locations. We struggle to take the one up the road there too. It's just spatially, we're very challenged to locate the sign. I know we discussed it as a site plan. This is one of our smaller sites that we developed, and there's just so much occurring here that
And you said this is one of your smaller sites too, right?
it is a smaller site for Sheets. I'm not going to call it the smallest site.
Okay. No,
but
I said one of your smaller.
Yeah, it's
I
a
didn't say it
smaller
was the
site for
smallest.
Sheets. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And you're obligated to show the prices. I mean, that's something you have to do, so we've got to find a way to solve for it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is just maybe a silly question, but why don't you put those price numbers on the edge of the canopy? That's going to be sticking up that everybody can see.
Yeah. We're very cognizant of architectural presence, and we're very proud of our structure and our facades. So we really want to respect it. It's
I
yin
get it.
versus yang again. I know it really is. So.
Plus, the planning commission might not have approved it.
That's fine. Okay. Let's focus back.
Yep.
Okay, so is the presentation, you're done with that, right? Or do you have more
Correct,
to
yeah.
show? Okay. Any questions about the presentation?
No.
Clarity on
No, no.
that? Okay. And then I'll ask if anybody in the audience is here to speak on this application. I'm going to assume no. Well, I shouldn't assume that, but I'll let the record show that no one is here to speak on that. There's nobody online at this point either. So with that, any questions so no questions on the presentation. Sam, what's the recommendation? Then we'll move into discussion. I'm sorry, Jasmine.
That's okay. So staff recommends that the planning commission, based on the exhibit submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report, findings and recommendation, grant AFP-9971-2024 Walnut Hill Shopping Center Comprehensive Sign Package Amendment Approval, finding in conformance with sections 24-12.6E and 24-12.6G of the city's zoning ordinance.
Excellent, thank you. And this includes all of the building signs for the Sheets building as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, just to be clear. Any questions on the recommendation? All right. So my one comment, and I don't know, I'm not saying yes or no, but my one comment is this. We've known all along this was a more compact site, a more compact version of this brand. And when I'm looking at the presentation, what strikes me is you've got a lot of Sheets up there. I mean, a lot of repeat of that brand name, which is, I get it. You need to do something like that. I don't see any real value in doing it on the canopy. In fact, it looks a little out of place being horizontal when it's a sloping canopy, and it's small. It's not really. I don't know if it does you any good when you have a big red line up there that matches the building. It seems obvious to me, and yet it adds probably more of that kind of just visual. Lots of stuff happening in a small space. So my one, I guess, recommendation, or at least discussion point is, why don't you keep the canopy clean, or why don't we recommend that and talk about that, and then concentrate on the building? You get that focus because it's part of the architecture. It's composed nicely, and then the price banner. I don't know. We have a lot of choices if it needs to read from 355 from Frederick Avenue, and I don't want to compete with the center signs, right? So moving it closer to the corner becomes kind of like this, where are we type of thing, right? So with that, any comments from the commission?
No, I think there's some sound logic there on the end of a very thin canopy. It's a nice architectural element, to your point. You're spending some money on the thinness and the elegance of that sort of nice, trellised.
Let the record
canopy.
show, Sheets was discussed in terms of elegance at this meeting.
Yeah, I felt a little pain in the back of my throat, but it is what it is. And I think I'm following your logic here. I don't have any heartburn about the monument sign by the building. It just kind of is what it is, a necessary, not evil, but a necessary sort of slightly uncomfortable little sign. But it's swallowed up by the architecture. But to your point, having that canopy, is there an overriding branding reason why the end of that canopy wouldn't be identified with the large brick building with Sheets on every facade?
I can answer some of the question if you like. So
Yep.
our canopies have gone through quite an evolution. So if we went back several years in time, we did an illuminated awning that went around the whole thing, and we had the Sheets logo built into the fabric of that awning. A few years ago, we came up with this new architecturally driven sloped roof with open web truss. I don't like to compare sites. I do it too often. But if we drove up north on 355, the Sheets signs hung below the canopy, and the evolution now we're pacing on the facade. So we've always had a Sheets sign on our canopy. It's just evolved over time. We went through a true canopy to this sloped roof. I'll call it a canopy. Still, it's not a canopy roof with that sun hanging down below. Now we've kind of moved the sign up so it's built into the fascia itself. So,
And the detail is actually built into the fascia, right?
it's a sign. It's not built into. We build the fascia and then we adhere the sign. We mechanically attach the sign.
But
It's a
the
separate
fascia
cabinet.
has a curve, has a dimension to it that reflects the sign. It's curved, right?
You can
The
see it
fascia.
a little bit.
Yeah,
from
there's
the
a
side view
detail.
here.
It's a curved fascia, and then it's a separate cabinet that we mechanically fasten with structural components.
Oh, I see.
There it is.
Yeah.
I'm not a gas station guy, but I would note that as you drive around, I think every gas station tends to have their name on their canopy.
You do.
Almost everywhere.
It's a good point. We started without it, and then we realized that it's I don't want to call it brand, but I think Jake did a good job of saying it better than me right now, is that every fuel canopy pretty much has a sign on it. It does. So not that that's a reason, but it's kind of the fact. Yeah.
Well, and as I said, I think where the canopy is setting away from the building more, when it's a bigger site, and that may be the only thing you see coming up from one direction or the other, which is the case particularly with the one up north. You kind of see that first and only. This site is just so compact, and there's it's all happening in that one spot. It was just more of a question. I will defer to the other commissioners on whether that's even a real concern or not.
I don't mind the branding on the canopy. And this is not something that's necessarily the planning purview, but I can't. What drives me nuts is the horizontal text on the sloping fascia.
Yeah, it's odd. Yeah, especially with the curved back.
I want to just get into Photoshop and fix it. I can't help myself.
It's definitely a lazy intern.
Understood. I don't think it would look good if you tilted it at an angle, so we'll be doing that.
I don't know how you fix that with keeping the text level, but it just you either make it smaller or you do something.
You hang it below.
You just promise they won't put it on actually put it on like that.
It's just
I mean,
I think it's a good point, but I'm okay with it.
Okay. No concerns over here.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I just wondered, is that purple? Was that just a rendering? It's gonna be
it's the
red.
TV.
Our
Right?
TV's dead and it's driving me nuts.
Yeah. Okay, that's what it is. Okay.
I don't think it's purple.
no.
It was purple.
Look, one,
Evens.
All right. So staff has recommended that we approve this amendment to the comprehensive sign package for this site plan. Is there any concerns with that recommendation? Is there a motion, please?
Chair, I move that the planning commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report, findings, and recommendation, grant AFP 9971-2024 Walnut Hill Shopping Center Comprehensive Sign Package Amendment approval, finding it in conformance with Section 24-12.6E and 24-12.6G of the city's zoning ordinance with no conditions.
second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice holiday.
Thanks.
All right. That takes us then to our second site plan for the evening, which is AFP-9972-2024. Request to amend the approved comprehensive sign package to allow bridge identity and lake house tenant signs at the Rio Washingtonian Shopping Center in the MXD mixed-use development zone. And this is an amendment to final site plan as well. And presenting from staff is Sam Copeland. I got it right this time?
Correct, yep.
Thank you.
Staff is before you again this evening to introduce amendment to final plan application AFP-9972-2024, which is to update the comprehensive sign package at the Rio Washingtonian Shopping Center. This shopping center is located in the MXD mixed-use development zone. This sign package was originally approved in 2009, and there have been 6 amendments to the sign package since then. This application comes before the Planning Commission in accordance with Section 24-12.6I3, which allows the Planning Commission to approve amendments to final site plans. Section 24-8.23 of the city's zoning ordinance permits the Planning Commission to approve a comprehensive sign package for a property or development that includes provisions that deviate from the standards of the city code. Here to present the application is Heather Madison with the Peterson Companies.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Sam. Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Heather Madison, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Rio, a mixed-use development, to request an amendment to our current comprehensive sign plan. Since 2018, Rio's ownership has made a significant reinvestment to ensure the property's long-term success and relevance. As long-term stakeholders, we've witnessed evolving trends and needs over the years. We've worked hard to adapt and to meet them. Looking ahead, we're committed to supporting these investments with thoughtful additions to enhance both the customer experience and ease of navigation throughout the development. One exciting development I'd like to highlight is the upcoming transformation of Dick's Sporting Goods, formerly Galleon's, an original anchor tenant, into their new flagship concept, Dick's House of Sport. This is a huge milestone, not only a testament to their success in Gaithersburg, but also an incredible opportunity to bring their best-in-class experiential retail experience to our community. To support this new concept, we're requesting permission to add signage to the pedestrian bridge trusses that connect the second-level store entrances to the adjacent parking garages. These signs will benefit both Dick's House of Sport and Target, another anchor tenant in the same situation. The proposed signage will help customers navigate the development more effectively by creating clearer, visual, prominent markers. Specifically, we're proposing one sign per side of the bridge structure on Grand Corner Avenue. These signs will be limited to the 2 anchor tenants that utilize the bridge access and will be carefully placed to avoid visual clutter or competition with existing signage. Additionally, in this submission, we are requesting Rio's signage for Rio's newest attraction, Copper Canyon's Lake House. This floating dining experience, which opened in September, has been an overwhelming success, elevating both Copper Canyon's brand and overall guest experience at Rio. The proposed signage will reflect the Lake House's unique character and ensure it's easily recognizable from key vantage points along the boardwalk. The design is scaled to integrate seamlessly with the structure while maintaining a balanced and polished look. I will open up to the floor and also go over a lot of my slides, but that is the conclusion of my justification for this.
Great, thank you. Any questions on the presentation?
Very
Okay.
straightforward.
Let me do this. There's nobody online, and I'm going to ask if anybody in the audience is here to speak on this application. No. Only the front empty 2 rows are visible on TV. The rest of the empty rows aren't. So wanted to
I
make
wish
sure
I knew
there's-
that before I sat. Back of my head for the whole thing.
It looks so far away you can't even tell. So, on the bridge sign specifically, what you're showing is essentially filling in the flange of the steel there with something. Was there any consideration that, and by the way, this, I assume this will be the branded signage for, in this case, Dick's and Target. It's not just generic lettering, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if you got that whole name in there but limited the height to just what that depth is of the beam, girder, whatever, you'd be limited. I mean, it would look almost incidental, almost like, clearance 13.9 or something. It would look like almost like an incidental sign, not something that really animated the location of the store. So I'm wondering if you all had considered, or if staff had recommended not, doing something to essentially created more of a deliberate sign backdrop rather than just leftover structural space, and gave you the possibility of proportioning it like the brand might want to be, with their, whatever the proportions of their signature and logos are. Does that make sense?
Are you saying, sorry, just so I'm understanding, so like the inset here,
just kind of traditionally thinking about how signs go, they have a more prominent role than just an incidental leftover space. They're given kind of a place in and of themselves. And it just happens you've got a beam running across here that's, 14, 16 inches, whatever it is. Maybe it's more than that, 2 feet. You think it's 24 inches?
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
yeah.
But relative to everything else that's happening around there for identity and for, visual details and everything else, that's a really small space. And especially if I don't know what Dick's new signature is going to look like, but if they have any stacking to it at all, it's going to look even extra small. You know what I mean? It's just sort of an incidental space. So what I'm leading up to is, was there any consideration to give more of a backdrop that might span, might reach above the height of the walkway a little bit, so that you got a kind of a legitimate space to do a sign in whatever form it needs to be in? Or did we recommend they stick to just that face of the steel?
I can answer that one.
Yeah.
So when staff was reviewing the application, we thought it would make sense for it just to be within that existing bridge beam. Staff was of the opinion that if it was a little bit larger, it might look a little out of place and then might add to visual clutter perhaps. So it seemed more logical to, with what the applicant was presenting, just to keep it within the existing space. It almost looks like a sign band.
My question would be how long, what would be the length of that span, of that sign on the span? Would that go the entire, between the girds, between the foundations, or?
15 feet.
Our recommendation was 15 feet
15
this
feet,
time, just
yeah.
given the length that were provided.
Any consideration to making it even longer, to go along with what the chairman was saying about raising it up in height, to give it more prominence by going further across, let's say 20, 25 feet, whatever that is?
Well, I think where I was headed was I want it to be a function of what the actual sign is, or what the words are, not just, kind of arbitrarily squeezed into a little tiny space. That's all I was leading up to, if there was any thought about that. But I got the answer. Staff has counseled them to move towards keeping it within the confines of the beam.
Okay.
These are set as maximum dimensions, right? So like, for example, Dick's is gonna do their sign design and it may be 2 foot by 10 foot.
Correct.
So it's,
15 is.
this is the outer
max.
bounds
Okay.
and they will scale to
Okay.
be whatever the brand signage looks like.
All right.
Okay. And I, by the way, it's a discussion point. I was just
Yeah.
sort of what you all thought.
I mean,
And does that
I
stand,
guess you,
I'm sorry, the placard stands proud. It's mounted in front of whatever, I actually don't know what the detail is. It looks like you've got sort of a column that continues down and along the face of the beam. Although it doesn't look like that in the picture.
No, it's fine.
no,
Okay.
Flush.
Yeah.
So that condition doesn't really exist. If you go to the picture, the photo, yeah. So it's a sign panel you're not mounting directly on the beam itself. You're mounting a
Flush with
backdrop
the-
to that stands or is forward of whatever that is. Is that right?
It's, you're talking about cabinet letters most likely, depending on what the tenant wants to do, right? But, I think you're talking about, could be a lit logo with lit letters, it's cabinet, right? It has a depth to it, metal lettering. Could be a logo, whatever it is.
Correct me if I'm
In your
wrong.
application.
But, the intent, once the tenant presents their signage, we're giving them the maximum 30-foot or 30 square foot maximum capacity. But yeah, we'll have to review each tenant signage as presented, whether it's via cabinet, channel letters, or, however they're presenting that signage. Still have to go through.
What are you proposing for the sign package, for it to be illuminated or not necessarily, or anything they bring?
Yeah.
bring-
It says,
Not requiring at the time, similar to the other requirements within the CSP. We don't require illuminated signage. It is recommended.
But we
always.
are approving this
But-
language. It's tenant signs may be metal cabinets and individual letters with internal illumination for individual letters only. No internally illuminated light box, which is good.
That's our
So-
sign ordinance, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what's going into this. This is their comprehensive
Yeah.
sign plan.
Sorry, just so we're clear, I'm reading the report here that says internally illuminated light box signs are not allowed. That's the statement on page 795
And
of the
Yeah,
staff report.
and this agrees with that. The light box is not allowed, but individual letters and logos are. So tenant signs may be metal cabinets with individual letters
Got
with
it. Yep.
internal illumination.
Yes.
For individual letters only.
Yes.
And that's
Okay.
consistent with our broader sign ordinance.
Yeah.
We don't like big
But
bright.
that's what we're
Yep.
approving. Yeah.
Yep.
And if I may jump in, so when we were working with Peterson Companies, we wanted them to, because clearly the sign ordinance right now doesn't have anything for signs on a bridge such as this. So we wanted to make sure it conformed as closely as possible to our sign ordinance. So one of the things we worked on was making sure that, if they were to propose an internally illuminated light box, that the background be opaque. However, the current language states that there is no proposed internally illuminated light box. So there was collaboration to make sure it was in conformance with our code.
Okay.
Yeah, and it certainly looks nice as a painted, sort of real bridge sign, like an actual railroad
Yeah.
bridge or something. It's kind of a cute idea.
But that's not what's being proposed.
Well, I think we don't have a proposal. That's based on what the tenant's gonna give us, but what we're, in the comprehensive sign plan, we're allowing internally letters and logos, individual letters. Or painted or whatever, so.
Can I ask a hypothetical to staff, just because I'm especially looking at the photos and seeing some of the other great murals and other things that have been done around the city. If a tenant were to come in and want to do a painted sign that filled the whole web of that beam with some sort of brand specific artwork, and the text portion and logo portion of their sign met this, would that trigger a broader review? I don't know, if there was a mural of soccer balls and basketballs and all sorts of other things painted in the web of that beam, and you had Dick's House of Sport in the center that was 2 foot by 15 foot, how would that be looked at? Because I think there are some creative ways. If I was the graphic designer tasked with doing this for these brands, looking at this,
Even a contrasting background.
Yeah, I
it wasn't
mean,
green. Yeah.
there's a lot of different creativity looking at that photo that you could have within that beam structure that would be brand appropriate, community appropriate, and not necessarily plaster the letters across the entire thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting suggestion. When I was reviewing this application, I didn't quite think of that, to be quite frank. We were focused pretty much only on the signage within the 15 feet. I do know that the sign code has sections for when murals are presented, so there's a review process for that. However, the way that I see it, we're going only off of the current sign package, and if anything additional were proposed, my thought would be we'd have to either go with what's here, amend the sign package, or if the sign package allows it, then we would default to the development code.
And the development code mural review is what? Doesn't have to come to us, right? It's just staff review?
I can take a look at the code real quickly here.
My understanding that murals are not, if there's no sort of branding, they're not considered signage.
Okay.
It's more of just a design feature.
So soccer balls would probably be okay.
Be great.
Yeah, would be cute.
Yeah, it says here in section 24, 8.4, signs exempt from regulation and/or permits. Signs exempt from regulation and/or permits unless otherwise provided for by the article or city code. The signs identified within the section are not subject to regulatory and permitting provisions. It continues, and it says 5, certain art and landscaping. Murals, works of visual art, and landscaping containing letters or words that have been approved for display by the mayor and city council or a city commission, board, or committee are not subject to the regulatory and permitting provisions of this article. So it does state in there, approved by display by the mayor and city council or a city commission.
I hate to jump up, but so there's also another provision that says if it's basically just characters and pictures and paint, color and stuff like that, that's not a sign, as long as it's not also like a corporate logo. So let's just look at Target, right?
Yeah.
So if Target wanted to put their little bullseye all
Right.
along there, that's probably not gonna work because that is a corporate logo. But if they wanted to paint it red and then put Target in white letters, that might be okay, or some other contrasting color. Same thing with Dick's if they wanted to do some color.
I think that's what I was getting at and hoping for looking at this, that this sets out clear parameters for the brand text and the logo fits within this, but there's a whole other canvas there that these brands could choose to do brand adjacent artwork that doesn't have logos and things that could actually be really great. So there's flexibility was my point, what I was hoping for.
And it's there, right? So we're good.
We're trying to wreck Peterson's branding.
How are you feeling about the 50? If you go back to the exhibit that shows the extent, any concerns with the proposed gross dimensions? Okay,
It looks good.
so let's turn our discussion real quick to the
Lake House.
the river
Lake
house
house.
lake house thing.
With no walls.
Is that almost implies that it is an illuminated box sign? How bright it is on that? What's I didn't actually look at
Does
the
say.
letters.
Sure does look like
does
one,
say.
doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think the lights above it.
Maybe directly internally or externally illuminated. Allow materials support or sign.
So Sam, this would need to follow that same guideline where the background is opaqued, right? If it's internally illuminated, only the letters can be illuminated, not the whole backdrop.
So we're talking about the lake house
Lake
signs,
house,
correct?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna take a look at the exhibit number 2, which is proposed changes. So looking at exhibit 2,
It's got an overhang lead. It seems to be reflecting off of it.
It looks like a
So-
light source in this, but that might be just an overzealous renderer.
So pesky interns again.
so looking at the
Web, not
lighting,
flange. I said flash. Yeah. Web.
so this is page 44 of exhibit number 2. It says, so for the lighting, signs consisting of individual letters will have concealed lamps or transformers and may be internally lit, backlit halo cell, or externally illuminated.
Okay. So the language is clear. We don't have to worry about that. Any concerns with this proposal?
No.
No.
Nope. Okay. Looks good. More animation, more visual stuff on the site. That's
Well,
great.
I'm still not sure. So you read the rest of that sentence, or the next sentence. Those that utilize a panel-style format, letters contained within a contiguous sign frame may be internally or externally illuminated, either uplit or downlit. Does say in no internally illuminated light box sign style that illuminates both text and signed area. So it can be a whole box sign, but then you have to cut out letters, right?
Yeah, I'm reading that as well. I think what, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like what they're trying to say here is trying to get it in conformance with the development code. So, you know, if there is an internally illuminated light box, that the background not be translucent so that way light can go out, it be opaque. That's how I was interpreting that. Is that how Peterson Company was reading that?
Yeah, I think the language is clear. Okay. It's just, yeah, doesn't match the rendering probably.
Okay. That's all. Any other concerns or? Nope. Any concerns at all? All right, is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibit submitted applicant's testimony, staff report, findings, and recommendations, grant AFP 9972-2024 Rio Washingtonian Sign Package Amendment approval, finding it in compliance with section 24-12.6E and 24-12.6G of the city zoning ordinance.
Second?
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thanks for the discussion. Appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Lots of good things happening there. We appreciate
Yeah,
all
that, the lake house is nice.
Oh, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening. All right, this takes us to from the commission. Danny, anything tonight?
Oh, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
We had an opportunity this weekend to celebrate an amazing life. My mother turned 100 and we gave her a party and she had a blast.
Good for her.
It was wonderful that, I mean, it was just so wonderful that we could celebrate her. She's still with it. She, you know, don't owe any money because she won't forget that. But, so she's still with it and she's still with us. And it was wonderful to celebrate her. And Councilmember Lisa Henderson came and presented. She made it Phyllis Lillian Cryo Winborn Day in Gaithersburg.
Very nice.
So we had a fantastic time, and it was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
I didn't get the memo. I'd have taken that off for work.
You take it away. Well, you'd have to drive to Baltimore, but yeah.
That's great news, Danny. It's
Yeah.
always good to hear good news like that.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
to
Happy
celebrate
birthday to your
life
mom.
like that was wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Matt, anything tonight?
All set.
All right.
Nothing.
All right.
Nothing for me.
Nothing.
This is the point where you actually can.
You can actually
speak.
say something.
Not this evening, but thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Well, and as alternate Commissioner Rigg reminded me, this is our last meeting of 2024. So Happy New Year to everybody. It's coming quick for 2025. I'm sure we have lots of stuff packed in there. So who from staff wants to jump in on calendar? Okay, go ahead.
I'll jump in again. As was mentioned, this is the last meeting of the year, so congratulations. We'll meet again next January 8th. We have some exciting stuff coming down the pike for early 2025. We just don't have any confirmed dates yet. Planning staff, of course, would like to wish everybody a happy holiday season. May it be safe. And I'm very happy our friend Manasi Reddy joined us tonight because tomorrow is the last day of her internship.
Oh.
So Manasi, we've been very pleased. We hope she took something away, and we wish her the best in her future endeavors. We know she'll do great just based upon what she did with the department.
Great.
You let her get out of an internship without presenting an application? Come on.
Or at least sitting at the
What is
desk.
hazing coming to these days?
Seriously, nobody, no book
And the
report
commission
or
is
anything.
more than welcome to call her out.
I'm sure you had a great
Step
experience with this great staff. So congratulations.
Well, best
on-
wishes.
And good luck on whatever's next.
Architectural grad school, right? Yeah. Sweet.
Good. All right. Anything else from staff tonight? All right. If not, have a good evening. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. And we're adjourned.